In this video I'm going to be installing a custom clutch hose to allow me to rotate the carburetor for easy jetting changes. The easiest way to change the pilot and main jets on a carburetor is to remove the float ball drain on the bottom, and then you can access the jets. And to do that, typically you'd loosen off the clamps here, rotate the carburetor, and then you can remove it and access the jets. However, on the 2017 through 2019 KTMs, the clutch hose, as you can see, is routed straight up and stops the carburetor being rotated. This has really annoyed me and has meant that every time I want to change a jetting, I've had to flip the subframe up and take the carb out and do it that way. It's not particularly difficult, but it takes some time. So what I decided to do is to have a custom clutch hose made, which will allow me to route it behind the carburetor, and that will allow me to rotate the carb and easily change the jets. To figure out how long the new hose needed to be, I used some air hose and routed it all the way up to the clutch master and measured the length of that. I've never had any hydraulic hoses made before, so I went online and asked for recommendations, and a couple of people recommended Core Moto. So I contacted them, discussed the requirements of the custom clutch hose, and they said they can make me one, so that's what I decided to go for. So the details of the custom hose are shown here. It's 135 centimeters long. The slave banjo is 8mm internal diameter with a 20-degree bend, and the hose itself is stainless steel braided. And as you can see here, the kit comes with some copper washers, 10mm and 8mm, a couple of stickers, an installation guide, the hose, and packaging. When working with brake fluid, it's a good idea to use gloves so you don't get it on your skin, because it will irritate, and also have a cloth handy to mop up any spills or anything. Okay, so I fitted a new hose now, and I ran into a few issues, so I'll go through those and explain how I resolved those. So the first one is the new clutch master fitting doesn't have any adjustment for the angle of the hose here. So you just screw it in, and when it gets tight, that's the angle you end up with. The problem I had was the slave banjo fitting was pointing 180 degrees around the wrong way. So because it's got the angle, it was facing like that, and I wanted it to be like that. So what I did was, instead of using the 1mm thick copper washer that comes with the kit, I used a 1.5mm washer, and I think the pitch of the thread here is 1mm, so that meant when I screwed it in tight with a 1.5mm thick washer, it faced the slave banjo fitting 180 degrees round the other way, so it lined up perfectly. So that's an easy fix if you have some different thickness copper washers. The other thing I did was I routed the new hose this side of the BRP handguard supports. Originally it was down through here, and there was quite a kink there, and the reason I had to do that was the stock clutch hose is quite short, and there's nowhere I could do a different routing. So I much prefer this routing. There's no stress on the hose, and it's much better like this. And I should point out that the stock master fitting, it's actually adjustable, the angle, so you can line up the angle you want, and then you just screw in this. So regarding getting the right angle on the hose, this is a much nicer fitting. As I pointed out, if you have some different thickness copper washers, you can do it with this, but it's a little bit more tricky. The next issue I ran into is on the case. There's a raised area just here, and I found that with one copper washer, the banjo was just touching that. I didn't like that because I thought it might put some stress on it. So I decided to use two copper washers here, and that provided enough clearance so it's not touching, so that's no problem now. And originally I had this Storbus slave bleeder installed, and you can see here the length is almost 10mm longer than the stock bleeder, which I have installed now. The issue I had was when I rotate the carburetor, the clearance between the bleeder, the stallbus bleeder, and the float ball drain bolt was very, very tight. It meant I needed to remove the drain bolt in this position, and it's a bit fiddly. So I decided to put the stock one in, and as you can see here, I now have plenty of clearance. So I can rotate it and then remove the drain bolt very easily and access the jets. And I routed the hose along the frame using the stock fixture there, and along the frame, and just here it goes the other side of the carburetor and air boot and goes down and then comes out underneath the carburetor and attaches to the slave. So my bike is running really well with the jets I'm using, but I do want to try other combinations, and this modification will allow me to quickly and easily try different jets while riding. So I'm really pleased with this mod, and it's worked out really well.